right, dropping in on you. Hope everybody is having a great day, a great week, and all of that. I'm coming to you on behalf of the Odyssey Project. This is primarily aimed at the Black voice and the followers on that channel and on the pages on Facebook and other places. This is about work and concerns within the Black community. I'm going to move along in this as expeditiously as I possibly can, but I don't want to push through. I think one of the problems we have as a group is that we are sold on this snapshot, freeze frame, meme type things. The things we're facing in the Black community can't be solved with a meme. It can't be solved with some type of flash pronouncement or anything like that. It's going to take years of true understanding, research, and dissemination of information that provides understanding for us to be able to literally go out and do the things necessary within the community to make a change. The magic isn't going to happen without us having an understanding. We're brilliant people, we're resilient people, we're powerful people, but without knowledge of how things move, how things operate, we are participating in a game that's designed to defeat us, and we don't even know the rules. We don't know how it's being played. We don't know what's being done. We just know what's happening to us. So we are constantly reactive, never proactive, never planning, never devising strategies, never creating agendas, and we're always on the back end, and we're always frustrated, we're always hurt, we're always angry. And the answer is in us learning things. So I can't give you a 30 second short or a minute short or a 10-minute video and talk about the things we need to talk about. I'll do the best I can sometimes to come to you with some stuff and share with you and keep you going. But there are going to be some times you're really going to have to pick up a book. There are going to be some times you're going to have to read some research papers. There's going to be a time you're going to have to look historically and catalog some things to gain some understanding. You got to learn the rules. You got to understand how things are being played. Before I get any more off into this, look, and we're going to touch on some issues because I want you to understand that these issues that are out there that we are lamenting on these channels owned by those that we are claiming to are oppressing us, that there are solutions to these problems, that there are ways to change things, but you can't come in on the back end and talk about it and think that that's how you fix it. You got to sit up and find the origin. Causality is where you address things. Same thing with physical illness. You don't address it by taking synthetic medications to mask symptoms or to hide symptoms. You deal with the causality, and the symptoms go away when you deal with the causality. It's the same thing with all the problems we're facing. There are causes. We need to understand those causes. We need to understand how we may be contributing in some way, how we are participating in other ways, and how we are simply inactive in other ways. But as you know, we are in the middle of a fundraiser. So I'm going to read you a statement that I issued, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that we need to address. And then I'm going to give you something that I shared about an identity crisis, because I want to talk to you about the Black identity crisis and how it's literally playing itself out and expressing itself in all of these enigmatic issues that we are facing, and that's overwhelming our community, that's hamstringing our children, that's keeping us in last place on the socioeconomic ladder, that's helping to widen the racial wealth gap, and I can go on down the line. Mass incarceration, all these things have causality, and we can find them. But it simply says, this is a statement we issued on the fundraiser a while ago. It says, at the Odyssey Project, we consistently engage the enigmatic issues that are plaguing Blacks in America. There's a strong focus on rebuilding the Black family nucleus, returning men to the home in order to solidify and fortify the Black family, holistically educating Black youth so that they are properly prepared to go out into a world that is inherently hostile towards them and compete, conduct scientific research in all areas in which we struggle, including intergenerational transmission of trauma, epigenetic transmission of trauma, African American adolescent young adult male violence, social immobility, cognitive bias, social dysfunctionality, financial deficiencies, and more. These are the things that we're dealing with, and that's not even everything. And when you got all these things coming at you, you got trauma you haven't dealt with. So you're responding everything through a trauma, through the lens and the bias of trauma. And you don't understand why that's happening. Then you are supposed to be able to think clearly, but your trauma creates a fear response that shuts down your prefrontal cortex. So your prefrontal cortex is your impulse control, your reason, your ration, your planning, your strategy, all that stuff. You're hardly ever on that. You're wired to be stressed. That stress is leading to all types of diseases. All these things are connected, and we have the answers, but we're not working towards them. So, first thing I'm going to talk to you about is adverse childhood experiences and the poor outcomes that they lead to. There are 10. I shared it. I've shown you some video and some footage of a couple of workshops I've done on adverse childhood experience. I've been studying epigenetics and its influence on trauma, but also on health outcomes for decades. And I've literally lectured in multiple countries. I've actually was invited to lecture for the Epigenetic Council on the International Council on Epigenetics and Cancer. I never got into it for that. I got into epigenetics because I found it to be one of the explanations to multi-generational transmission of trauma. Why blacks 100 years plus removed from slavery were still behaving in certain ways. And I discovered so much more, but these explanations and this understanding is so valuable to what we're doing. And we don't see the value, so we don't give to it. We don't invest in learning and understanding about it. We don't invest in picking up books and reading and how we can implement things. I just could not sit down on this. I had to go fight. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a spike in a teen and suicide rates. Now, there are plenty of videos on this channel about all these things because I've been giving you this over and over again, sharing with you different parts of it. I've put hours upon hours upon hours upon hours upon hours of research into this stuff. So I can literally sit here and talk about any one of these things for a day and not shut up and still wouldn't have covered it all. So I give you as much as I can and I think you can take, but we've got a problem and the only ones that are going to solve it is us. So then we talk about blacks leading to divorce, the disintegration of the black family nucleus. If we don't understand that, nations are built on the family, and the family is built on the marriage. And when the marriage is assaulted, the family starts to fall apart and disintegrate, dissipate, and the ability to project yourself out forward in life through your progeny, through your offspring, it comes apart because in the family is where you inculcate the values, interests, and principles that guide those young kids in life to become successful. One of the first things that they did when they brought us over here is they took away our values, our interests, and our principles and superimposed their values, their interests, their principles. And this is where the identity crisis began because what you got to understand, we are a unique people. We're in a country that we are not from. Some who believe they are. This isn't this argument. I'm not here for that argument. I'm here talking about, I know the transatlantic slave trade took place. I know that people were brought here on ships. I know this for a fact. It can be proven. Now, who was here before that happened? I'm not here talking about that. That's a whole different thing. I'm talking about the ones who are called African Americans, accept and acknowledge being an African American, and then understand that while you may have an idea of being from Africa, Africa is not a country. African is not a nation. Africa is not a tribe. Africa is a continent of many nations, many tribes, many villages, and they all have very, very highly defined identities. And it's in the identity that explains some of the genetic makeup. Some of the things that you want to know about yourself is in that. You get Irish American, Italian American. They know where they're from. They don't just know they're from Italy. They can tell you what place in Italy their ancestors came to America from and what the history was there. There's a connection and there's a power that comes with that we don't have. We don't have a connected. We can say Africa, but we can't tell you from where. And then for those who might want to go and do the whole ancestry DNA thing, now you know they're taking your DNA and doing all kind of crazy stuff with it, so that ain't safe. If you care about that kind of stuff, and all that stuff. So then you're left with trying to figure yourself out, and we haven't established a place for ourselves. They've never given us a place. We're supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. That didn't happen. We didn't, there's no place that's been established. And when we've tried to set up roots and recreate this value, these values, interests, and principles, they disturbed it. And they've consistently interrupted it. And we have moved forward and we have come out and we are still struggling. We still at the same place in home ownership we were in 1960. Hasn't moved 41%. One of the reasons why it's hard for us to close the gap in the racial wealth gap. There are so many different things going on. Let me move on. The racial wealth gap, I just mentioned that, so I can go on. And then black men, only 6% of the population would make up almost 40% of the prison population. And that's growing for black women also. And I can go on and on, but we're going to get there. We have a problem. So I'm just going to read you literally a very, very little of this. But I want you, this is from my 19th book, Born in Captivity, Psychopathologists, and Legacy of Slavery. I want to get into this identity crisis, and I want to touch on how all those things I mentioned and more are a play out of the identity crisis when you don't know who you are. From an individual self-image to a collective self-awareness, when you don't know who you are, you can be easily manipulated, you can be easily moved, you are lacking values, interests, and principles that serve you as an individual, values, interests, and principles that serve your family, your community, your race. And so then you tend to be open to trying to find your space. And in trying to find your space, you're easily misled, misguided, triggered, and so much other. But this is just the beginning of chapter 11, an identity crisis. And it says, one of the most devastating impacts of slavery is that it robbed blacks of their identity. The knowledge of self is paramount to the advancement of any people, and blacks are no different. The psychological legacy of slavery is a poor self-image that is fostered by the lack of knowledge of self. This was accomplished through a complex system of subjugation in which an entire group of people were forcefully removed from their own land and taken to a foreign country where they were stripped of their religion, more importantly, their spirituality, their history, and their name. Frantz Fanon, a great psychologist, a psychiatrist in his own right in the 1950s, addresses the alienation of self in his work, Black Skin, White Mask. Now, obviously, he was dealing with something different in his homeland, but it was, if psychiatry is the medical technique that aims to enable man no longer to be a stranger to his environment, I owe to myself to affirm that the Arab, permanently an alien in his own country, lives in a state of absolute dispersonalization. The social structure existing in Algeria was hostile to any attempt to put the individual back where he belonged. Last paragraph. What Fanon is expressing in this passage is his concern for the extremity of this type of alienation for the personal identity that was being suppressed through the collective oppression and social antagonism of a specific group. As Fanon explores the psychological dynamic of the way the ambivalence associated with being an alien in an environment in which the victim must call home, he's forced to confront how the ambivalence impacts the individual identity and the negative impact it produces. Not only does the social antagonism produce the psychoanalytic ambivalence of the unconscious, but it also serves as an antithetical force to the phenomenological affirmation of self and the group at large. Let me explain what that means. When you're able to take away a person's identity, you take away the thrust that drives them. See, everyone's driven by their self-image. Your self-image is your self-concept. It's how you see yourself. It's also how you believe the world sees you. Your self-image is the thing that tells you what is, what isn't, what you can do. Your self-image is normally developed very early in life, basically within the first 5 years. And in this self-image, it tells you what you can do, what you can't do, your paradigms, your social structure, all of this stuff is set up. But the most important thing is it's an awareness of self. It's where you get your self-esteem and your self-confidence. It's when mom tells you you're smart, when dad tells you you're beautiful, when parents tell you you're capable of doing anything, or they tell you you're stupid, you're dumb, you're crazy, sit down, you're never going to be anything, blah, blah, blah. All of these things are what develop a self-image. You got to be very careful of how you talk to your children because you are their primary label givers. What do I mean by that? I mean that as a primary label giver, you have the predominant authority in your child's life. When your child looks at you, they see you as the preeminent authority in their life. So mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, teacher, pastor, so and so, and then siblings, older siblings, then peers. But all play a role. But mom and dad are going to have a vital role in establishing that. And if there are problems with mom and dad, then it's going to be reflected in the socialization and the development of the child. And if you're sitting up and you're speaking ill, or while you're speaking and dealing with your child is seeing a behavior that is indicative of powerlessness, indicative of hopelessness. If they look at you and they see that you're not in a place that you want to be, and they can see that there's a distinction between them and the people who get on in the world, they will get what you call learned helplessness. They will determine, because I am this person, this is all I'll ever have. This is all I ever do. This is what I'm going to become. And then if that same thing is being reinforced by the external forces, the exogenous forces. If they look at the news and every time they see a black face, it's in a mugshot. If they sit up and they look at the television, every time they see a black person, it's in a negative role. And you can go on down the line. It's reinforcing the idea of who they are. It's why you can sit up and you will expect worse from a black person than you expect from a white person. And we already know that the vast majority of them do not have our best interests at heart. But we've been trained by the observation of self through the imagery that's being pushed upon us to believe that we aren't as good as we are. It's the reason why we go out of our way to lighten our skin. It's the reason why we go out of our way to do other things. This isn't about telling you what you can and cannot do. It's about saying, do I understand the catalyst behind what I do? It's about gaining an understanding of what's going on. So when we talk about adverse childhood experiences, I've given you those. I'm going to run them down to you one more time. These things have massive impact, and they are a part of the catalyst of projecting multi-generational trauma, but they also are the catalyst for being able to predict and monitor the health outcomes all the way through adulthood. So again, you got number one, physical abuse; number two, verbal abuse; number three, sexual abuse; number four, physical neglect; number five, emotional neglect; number six, an alcoholic parent, but that can be translated into any parent that's addicted to any controlled substance; number seven, an incarcerated family member; number eight, the disappearance of a parent through divorce, death, or abandonment; number nine, a family member diagnosed with a mental illness; and number 10, a mother who is a victim of domestic violence. Now, here's where it gets real interesting. Once you get to three and four aces, each one of those count as an ace. So you get an ace score. A child with an ace score of 3 to 4, especially 4, at that particular point is in danger of a lot of long-term health outcomes. Number one, they are 2.5 times more likely to develop some type of autoimmune deficiency. They are 4 times more likely to develop ischemic heart disease, 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. They are 3.5 to 4 times more likely to develop certain types of cancer. This is epigenetically influenced illnesses and behaviors. There are 3.5 more times to become risk takers, whether it's promiscuity, whether it's drugs, whether it's a bunch of other things. They will develop these mental capacities as well as physiological ailments, and it plays out over the course of the life. So you don't say, okay, the kid had a bad childhood, so things have changed. Now, no, that bad childhood is literally organizing and using the epigenetic influence to regulate gene activity. So, okay, let me slow down just a minute. I want to explain this as simply as I possibly can. When I talk about epigenetics, I'm talking about the ability to influence genes without interference of DNA, interfering with the DNA code. The DNA code comes from mom and dad, 23 chromosomes from mom, 23 chromosomes from dad, and it has all the information in it that's going to tell you everything you're going to be, from the eye color to your hair color to how tall you can become, and so many other things. Also your temperament and disposition, and so many other things. However, every gene, every cell has to read that DNA information in order to perform its own task. So its job is to read the DNA and then perform the task. However, epigenetic tags, which are the passing down of trauma by influence, meaning that literally the trauma imprinted. So every time you have a traumatic experience, you don't just experience it in your mind. As a matter of fact, that's not even the first place you experience. You're experiencing your body. Your body keeps the score. Your body literally logs in every cell that traumatic experience. It literally remembers it in the body. So it creates this memory and this tag. And so this tag is in small cases, in non-emphatic cases, can be washed away through the meiotic reproduction process of the reproductive system. So when the child is when 23 chromosomes come from each parent, it's not there. But in fact, if it was a real extreme or long-standing complex engagement of trauma, that tag still comes through. And so you literally can pass your trauma to your child through procreation. You can literally give your seed a part of you that is traumatized. And then it also leads to the proclivity of being more easily traumatized in future situations. But that's just the front part of it. So what happens is now you have this epigenetic influence on these genes. Now, the epigenetics means that these tags and this environment has the ability to upregulate and downregulate genes. What does that mean? That means that I've got immune genes. I've got disease genes. They're just there. What happens is when the body is in homeostasis, meaning it's in a perfect environment, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, what happens is the immune system is functioning optimally. Disease genes are downregulated or turned off. And so this is how you stay healthy. This is how people heal themselves, by putting themselves in optimal environments, by removing the stress from their life, by being positive in managing the thoughts that pass through their head consistently. It is a process of holistic. But what happens when something that's short-lived, like a stressful moment where you almost get hit by a car, turns into an ongoing thing because everywhere you go, you're taking the stress of the job, the stress of trying to raise kids with not enough money, the stress of knowing I'm a black man and there's a cop behind me. And you ain't did nothing wrong, but just the cop being behind you and you being a black man, stress level going through. You're stressed about what the boss is going to say. You're stressed about what's going on. Now there's stress in the home. So now the marriage is struggling. But then also your body is reading all of this. And now what happens as the epigenetic influence starts to downregulate certain genes, the immune system, and all of the other things that lend to your health, what happens is the immune system ability to read the DNA coding, the cellular ability to read the DNA coding becomes marred. So it can't function the way it does. So then it leads to long-term issues and complications, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. It's happening, and we are in the middle of it. They know this. They've done the research. The problem is I don't know anyone else, and I could be wrong. I take that back. Dr. Nadine Burke in California. I don't know how far she's branched out in epigenetics outside of adverse childhood experiences, but she's a beast when it comes to adverse childhood experience. Dr. Jar DeGru also is very aware of epigenetics. So there are some minds out there doing it, but not at a level that we need to know. They have an entire think tank that understands the power of triggering us. And the thing is, they do it so cunningly that we don't get it. But you got to understand, it's happening in so many different ways, and we have a responsibility to reclaim our values, interests, and principles. But we have to do that by reclaiming the family. We have to do that by investing in understanding. Let's talk about what I shared the other day. Grand Rapids, Michigan. A black man, I believe his name was Marcus Lofton, kills his wife of a few months. I think they got married in February. This past Friday, he shot her multiple times in the head, neck, and chest because she had him served with divorce papers because back in May he jumped on her. And the go-to response to that is he's evil. Just the epitome of evil. He's dark, he's trash, he's worthless, he's nothing. He's all that. But what we don't want to look at, and when we're responding to that, what we don't want to look at, and I had this conversation with someone previously, what we don't want to look at when we talk about how horrible of a person he is and how evil he is, and I hope they hide him in jail, and I hope, what we don't want to talk about is at one point in time, he was a little boy. Now, there are some people who are just going to end up and going the wrong way, but I'm telling you, far too many of our males are ending up in spaces that they could have been saved from if we'd have been out front of this instead of waiting to the back end. There are too many of us in prison. We talk about 1.5 million men, black men missing, 1.3 of them in prison. But we don't want to talk about the front end. It was Frederick Douglass that stood up and said that it's easier to build strong black children than it is to heal and repair broken men. We're trying to repair broken men, and we're not even looking at what broke them. We're not looking at the fact that they weren't properly socialized. We're not looking at the fact that when you take a man whose natural genetic makeup is to have a place, and he's born into a situation where there is no place. He's the most underemployed, the most unemployed, and the only racial group in America where the woman makes pretty much the same as the man is the black community. And it's not by accident, it's engineered. Why? Disrupt the relationship between the man and the woman. You eliminate the ability to teach values, interests, and principles in the proper family environment when they're supposed to be taught in the developmental years, and you end up with children not knowing who they are, children struggling to be acknowledged, children struggling to be accepted, children struggling with wondering what the future holds. Then you get young black males who are not properly socialized, get to the age of 14, 15, and there's this natural push at that age. That's why all other races have some form of a rite of passage. Why? Because you need to prepare them to let them know who they are. You need to prepare them to give them a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, a sense of responsibility, a sense of longing, a sense of being. And we don't do that. Not on a universal level. We got some great parents doing some great jobs. We got some parents doing the best they can. We got some parents out there. And then we got a bunch that are just fending for themselves. But what we need is a universal standard of black manhood that we literally socialize every young black male into. Why? Because number one, you're going to be able to identify what you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to be. You know you got a place. You also understand the other person next to you that looks like you. Why? Because they are striving for the same thing. You now come together with someone you don't even know, and you are knowing whether or not one person is doing what they're supposed to be doing if you are able to observe them long enough. But here's the thing. We're not doing that. So what's happening? They're out there trying to figure it out. But when you get 15, there's something that happens neurologically in a male. I keep trying to tell everybody it's not just emotion. It's a neurological or neurobiological process that's taking place. At about 15, this is why you're supposed to socialize. At about 15, he starts to struggle with who he is and where he's going. It's natural. It's why we're moving into the deeper part of adolescence and starting to head towards young adulthood, and the natural yearning of knowing what am I going to do as a man starts to hit. What do I do as a man? Where do I belong as a man? How do I respond as a man? How do I act as a man? And the primitive thing is to go out and to seek physical contact with a woman. But that will only provide momentary validation because it's supposed to come in a package deal that he's building in his family and he's not getting. That's why he's going from woman to woman, trying to rekindle that first feeling of being validated, because that's what happens when a woman gives herself to you. In the truest sense, in the most purest sense, when a woman gives herself to you, it's saying, I trust you enough to give you the best part of me. Now, obviously, we've diminished that. We've torn it down. We've done everything, and we've made sex nothing. You know, I can be what I want to. I can do what I want to. We call it liberating. We don't realize that every time you exchange, you leave a part of yourself. There's literally DNA exchanging going on. There's all kind of things we now know that's happening. And you're wondering why there's so much confusion, because we're leaving our children to their own wiles, and they're trying to find themselves by running through each other. They're trying to find themselves by handling each other. The name of the game has stopped being cover for a black man, and it's run game for a black man. It's how many I can get for a black man. It's what, all I need is the bag and I'm about. No, 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 no. If you don't know what to do with yourself before you get the bag just makes you more dangerous. But we've got all these things going, and this is just in one area, but it's so big. So this man has killed his wife because he ran game on her. He got with her, and then she realizes that he goes both ways and he's violent. So she has him arrested for beating on her. He's told he can't go within a certain 1,000 feet of the home or her, and he gets served with divorce papers. And at the same time, some information about him being with a man pops up on the internet. She finds it and she shares it, and he goes over there and ultimately kills her. Like I said when I shared this yesterday, nothing justifies him killing her. It's not her fault that he killed her. He's responsible for his actions. But sisters, I'm going to share this with you. When you got the volatility of the mindset of a lot of these men, the ability to control their behavior, the ability to manage their emotions isn't there. Impulse control is almost zero. They are fighting for what they think is respect. And it has nothing to do with respect, but because we didn't socialize, they don't know that. They just know you made me feel a certain way, and I'm gonna get that back. And if I have to kill you to get it back, I'm gonna get it back. I'll spend the rest of my life in jail, but I'm gonna get it back. And what happens is you are hurt because you were misled. You are hurt because you were deceived. You are hurt because he wasn't what he showed himself to be in the beginning. And so you're fighting back the only way you know how. But here's the problem. You can't win that war. You post something that hurts him on social media. He kills you. That's not a fair exchange. And this isn't putting any blame on her. It's warning women, understand, if he's doing this stuff to you, can't trust him. He's not somebody you can trust. So this ain't where you trying to get, exchange, blows with him. You want to just get away from him. You want to get away from him. You want to do it as easily as possible. Something my grandmother used to say to me all the time, and I just think about it. She said, son, when you got your hand in the lion's mouth, you can't yank it. You'll lose it. He said, you got to be real still, real subtle, and slowly wiggle it, hoping that at some point the pressure eases and you can get it out. You can't go snatching it out, you lose it. You got to understand what situation you're in. You can't muscle everything. And when you got a man that's volatile in his behavior, he will harm you. And I mean to the point of taking your life. So again, we can't do that. We're talking about, and it's for the same reason they're in prison. Then we're talking about all the things that are going on. Did I mention that, this whole thing, we've got a situation where I remember growing up, the ongoing joke was black people don't kill themselves. Well, that's not true. And it's definitely not true now. There has been a 49% spike in suicides among black males between the ages of 14 and 24. Black girls between the ages of 5 and 13 literally lead that statistical category in suicides. There's been an uptick in suicides among black single mothers who are just overwhelmed and checking out. Also, black women are more likely to be diagnosed with depression than any other female. And that's important because women are more likely to be diagnosed with depression anyway. So the person most likely to be diagnosed with depression in the U.S. is a black woman. And then we are constantly celebrating the very things that are making her depressed. Her single parenthood, her being a provider on top of a nurturer, on top of a teacher, on top of a disciplinarian, and all of these other things that she's expected to be, that she's supposed to be sharing with the person who procreated with her. And we're not addressing these issues. This is absolutely unacceptable. But we can't get on the back end. Just like we want to call that guy who in Grand Rapids who killed his wife all kind of names and all that. That's coming in on the back end. That's reactionary. That's sitting up and talking about it from a powerless position. The position of power is proper socialization of young black males. That's why I created Black Men Lead. That's why Black Men Lead needs to be a national network. So a thought ran through my mind. That's why I slowed down. It ran through my mind and I wanted to let it finish because it was important. But we need a national network. We need a universal definition of manhood. We need something that, regardless of religion, regardless of where you live at, that when we talk about a black man, there are just certain things you got to look for. Is he a covering? And I mean that in every way. Does he protect? Does he provide? Does he teach? Does he lead? Does he provide a sense of identity for his entire family? Can the family look at him and see the future? I mean, that's the power of the black man. And the black woman has power too, but she doesn't shine and flourish in her power unless she has a covering. That's why traditionally, when you look back for all this new wave stuff happened, a woman left the covering of her father and went underneath the covering of her husband. Why? Because he provides things for her she cannot provide for herself. Not in the fullness. She is exposed. Now, it's a problem when the one who's supposed to be covering you is the one harming you. But again, that's because we didn't properly socialize. We didn't create the environment for them to understand who they were. The number one rule in Black Man Lead is a black man never brings harm to a black woman. Number one. First thing they're going to be told is going to be reinforced, and there is no negotiation or acceptance against that rule. And then we go down with business ownership, with responsibility of building wealth, and a whole bunch of other things that men have to do, being providers, all that stuff. But it starts with, we don't cause harm to our women. Then we protect our women. We don't use excuses not to protect. Well, they trash, they this, they that. Yeah, under our watch. You can't be the leader and then complain about what those under your leadership have done. So if black men want to be the head, want to be the king, want to be the leader, then you got to sit and say, what's happened under my dominion? What's happened under my leadership? Why does she not trust me? Is there a legitimate reason why she's bucking? Let's be honest with ourselves. And this isn't me dumping on black men, because black women, we've got to own some of the things we're doing too. You can't exchange masculine energy with a man when you think it's okay and then expect him to be your protector. You just told him you were on his level. He's either going to do a couple of things. A guy like me is just not going to deal with you. I'm going to respect you, and from a distance, anything you need, I'll give you. But as far as being in your space where you're constantly trying to act like one of my boys or act like one of my enemies and come, I don't need, and it's not that I'm afraid of you, it's that I'm trained to protect you. I'm literally conditioned to say, look, I got you, calm down. I'm not here to compete with you. I'm not here to harm you. I'm here for you. But you're coming at me in a way that I'm literally trained. See, there's the loving side of me that's from my family. And then there's the warrior side of me that protects my family. And you keep challenging the warrior side of me when you don't even belong there. But I get it. You've had to be me because nobody wasn't there. I get it. But what I can tell you is that's not how we're going to progress. That's not how we're going to progress as a people. We're not going to progress as a people by sitting up and thinking that we can operate as single parents in a predominance of our homes and train up children with holistic, balanced mindsets, psychological makeups, and senses of identity and self-esteem. It's not meant that way. We were meant to bring masculine energy and feminine energy into the same environment, sync that energy, that's called synergy, and to produce things that neither one of us could produce on our own. That's the power of the family that they've literally taken away from us and convinced us to abandon in many situations and convinced us that it's not worth it. What am I trying to say is this identity crisis has allowed the black family to continue to disintegrate. It has allowed for the black male to run amok in chasing something that he doesn't even know what he's chasing. It's allowed for the black female to be misled down a path that exposes her to things that she was never meant to be exposed to, and pushes her in places where she will never be revered and loved and admired the way she should be, because she's outside of a covering. She's outside of the scope of who she really and truly is at the purest point of her existence, because it's money in it, it's popularity in it, it's what everybody else is doing, and there's no sense of value, covering interests through principles. Values, interests, and principles are not governing our movement. We are so self-involved, self-indulged. The individualism is on a scale that's absolutely astonishing. And we're expecting to function as a collective. We're expecting to pull ourselves as a collective. And we're wondering why we're suffering on so many levels. It's because nobody is sitting around saying, what's the next move, and planning it. We're only reacting to what's happening after the fact. We got to become proactive. Over 80,000 hours of research myself. That doesn't count all the research done at the Odyssey Project Research Center. That's me, 35 years deep. That's almost 40 years. If I'm not mistaken, 40 hours a week on top of what I've done. I mean, I don't do it at that rate anymore because I just can't. Mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, I just don't have it in me. But there was a time I'm going 105 hours easily a week. My business, my research, my programs, just going. Because I believe in my people, because I love my people, because I see it. I've worked with women who are 60. I got clients, female clients and male clients, but I got female clients in their 60s still struggling with incest, still struggling with childhood sexual abuse, still fighting, but don't know what they're fighting. And I'm trying to help them make sense of it. On the flip side, Black Beauty, thank you for sharing this. Let me see. I'm gonna put this on here. Look, it's we've got to change some things. I cannot stress this enough. We've got to change some things. We are sitting in a situation where we're going backwards. We've got to develop, we've got to build, we've got to grow. We've got to stop allowing ourselves to be mishandled and manhandled, but we can't do it on the back end. We got to do it on the front end. What are we doing to save homes? What are we doing to add value? We've got to bring back a value and a prioritization to the home, to the idea of marriage. I can tell you, I've studied history. I've studied history, and not just from the vein of my blackness, but history as a whole. And any time that marriage has been spurned by enough people, civilization suffers. The design of marriage is not a religious thing. It is a spiritual thing. It is designed so that what has created something can nurture it. You bring two individuals together and you create the institution of the marriage. Then those two people bring into this world of life and it becomes a family. Now those two individuals who should have the same value system, aspire for the same things, be wanting the same things, but understand they play two roles in having those same things, working towards that while simultaneously inculcating into the psyche of that child who they are, what they're capable of, what they're responsible for, what they can do if they set their mind to it. And then providing an insulation around them that protects them from the outside influences that want to come in and snatch that identity away. That's the responsibility of the family. And when the family isn't intact, your child's identity is under constant assault by a system that wants to exploit them, send them to prison, turn them into nothing but consumers that own nothing but constantly buy everything. We have a responsibility to ourselves to ensure that the next generation is in a better situation. This is going to be one of those chances. If we don't do something soon, those that follow over the next 50 years are going to actually inherit something worse than what we inherited. And it's going to be on us because we didn't take action. We didn't sit down and we didn't look, we didn't understand. I've done the research. I could sit down and if you come to me and ask me, if I don't know, I guarantee I've worked with someone who does, that I trust, that we have the answers. Number one, African American adolescent and young adult male violence. The number one influence and the best way to deal with it is proper socialization. I've seen it. Reduction in violence, reduction in dropout rate, reduction in criminality and incarceration and recidivism, improvement in the enhancement or the chance of creating a living wage. So they become more skilled, they become more aware, they're more likely to marry and hold a family together. Proper racial socialization. That's why I created Black Men Lead. We've got to deal with the enemy and the elephant in the room. We've got to deal with the enemy on the inside. You've heard me say this many times, that the enemy on the inside, if there's no enemy on the inside, the enemy on the outside can do us no harm. We got to deal with the enemy on the inside. We got to deal with incest. We got to deal with childhood sexual abuse. We got to deal with abandonment. We got to deal with this proclivity of procreating and abandoning our progeny. We got to deal with this situation of being abusive towards one another. We got to deal with this situation of not having a business ownership, investment, wealth building mindset. It's a mindset. That's what it is. There are so many instruments out there that we have access to that will allow us to build wealth that they can't stop, that we're not taking advantage of. That's why I created the Path to Generational Wealth course. That's why I wrote the book, The War on Black Wealth. Why? Because there are things we can do. I plan on living my life to my last breath doing unbelievable work, whether it's appreciated now or not. I've had one of my closest friends, Dr. Michael Blanchard. He's told me this on more than one occasion. He says, Doc, my biggest fear is that people won't realize the value that you've brought to this struggle until you're gone. And my response to him each time he says that is, I'm good with that. I'm not here for a pat on the back. I'm not here for somebody to say, man, that dude is the dude. Care less about that. I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to sit up and say, you know what? I am going to give it everything I got. I'm going to share with you what I got. I'm going to give you the years and years of research experience and engagement that I've had, and I'm going to do everything I can to change it. But it works better when we work together. It works better when people get behind it. It works together that you're not waiting until you need me to deal with me. I get people that come to me. I mean, literally, this week alone, 4 people that are in need of things that we simply don't have the resources to give them. We have the expertise, so they're on a list now. Because the one thing that I made a change in is I cannot continue to be the only person funding a passion that serves the entire people. So I put them on the list, and as resources come available, still normally from me, but in a way that I can manage it and I can take it, I get to them. The problem is we got people that need stuff now. Now, if it's a crisis situation, I'm dealing with it to the best of my ability. But there's so much that needs to be done. So many children. And there are people I'm reaching out to and creating, and I'm going to be doing a lot of collaborating over the next year, connecting with people who are really doing something. If you know somebody who is seriously, and I mean seriously, committed to doing something, and you want to see if I work with, I have no problem with working with anybody. This, again, I don't have to have my name on anything. I'm about changing things and whatever it takes. So, again, we need your support. I mean, just in Black Men Lead alone, we need your support. We need your support in dealing with adverse childhood experiences. We need your support in dealing with this mental health crisis. And when I tell you there's a mental health crisis that we have failed to thwart, it is scary. A 49% increase in suicides among Black males between 14 and 24 And here's something that I never ever thought of, and I've been dealing in this field for a long time, and just really decided. Somebody asked me how were the suicides being committed. Well, I know for a fact 9 times out of 10 when it's females, it's normally some sort of strangulation, so normally some form of hanging or stuff like that, but or taking pills is normally it. But now females are becoming jumpers. That jumping used to be a dude thing. Putting a gun to your head or in your mouth is a dude thing. But what I didn't realize is we've got black kids stepping in front of trains. It's a new thing. Stepping in front of a train. I mean, just I mean, where do you have to be to step in front of a train? I know because I've actually dealt with the family of one of the kids who did it a few years ago. That kid was in a bad place. His entire family was in a bad place. And unfortunately, he was trying to carry the load, but he was only 17. Had a future in front of him too, a good football player. He's gone now. He just disappeared. He went downstairs to get a blanket, walked off and walked in front of a train. We can make a difference in this. Are you gonna stop everybody from killing themselves? No. But it's no way that we should be dying at the rate we're dying when there are answers. So that's my challenge. We can sit up and we can talk about who's bad and who's horrible and whatever on the back end of things, and it's nothing but yap. It's yap yap, and it does nothing. We've got to become proactive. We got to become actively engaged. We got to do things in a way that changes things. And that's my call to you. So again, find things to get involved with, find things to gain an understanding. We're getting our butts kicked because we don't know how things work. We're operating in a game and we don't know the rules, and we are being mishandled, we're being misused, we're being misguided, we're being exploited, we're being miseducated, we're being mass incarcerated, we're being gentrified. All of these things have answers and solutions, but we can't sit around expecting the ones creating them to benefit off of them to change them for us. They don't benefit from our empowerment. They're not going to be the answer to the solution. We are. So on that note, I'm gonna get out of here. And again, I'm asking you, again, support the work we do. There are several different ways you can do so in the description box. I simplified, took a lot of stuff out because I wanted you to be able to see it. But we need your help. We need your support. Again, on another note, if you're a person in need of help, leave information about what you need help with, or if you don't, just email us. Email us and we'll put your name on the list. If it's something that we can get to immediately, we will. I'm not telling anybody no, I'm just telling people we are limited in resources right now. And we're going to do everything we can to remedy it in time. This is where a lot of this collaboration is coming in. We've got to do some things a little differently. But in the meantime, there's so much I have to give that I want to give that I'm just simply limited in. I told somebody this earlier today. I'm willing to travel anywhere in the U.S. and teach them the Black Men Lead rite of passage structure if they're willing to set it up in their city. But obviously that costs. But I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to literally spend several years traveling, helping people set up these rites of passages in their communities. And so that they can literally have structure for little black boys who don't have black men in the home. And for the ones who have black men in the home that are struggling, we got resources for you too. We understand what you're fighting through. We understand what you're going through. We understand what it means to be a black man in this world. Trust me, it has not been easy for me. And I've literally buried myself in knowledge of understanding and fighting and moving and learning and growing and starting business, all that stuff. And it's still things that I run into. I get it. But we have, the more we're able to come together and provide support and unity, the better we're going to be. So I'm asking you once again, show some love, show some support, get behind what we're doing, communicate with us. Let me know what's going on. Let me know how you feel. Whatever the situation, we've got to get out of this, everybody on their own little island. We're sinking on our own little islands, sinking. So on that note, look, I'm going to get ready to get out of here. Once again, the information to show your love and support is in the description box. Thank you guys for sharing. If you found what I shared with you useful, click the like button, click the share button, and subscribe. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable remainder of your day.